Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. The greatest danger facing America's democracy today is the 2024 election campaign of the man whose hard work and persistence have earned him the right to 5 titles: Conman Don, Criminal Don, Coup-Master Don, Lying Don, and Moscow Don. Conman Don told you who he is when he said, "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose voters." Where did the Donald get the principles of his peculiarly below-the-belt politics? We all think that Trump does not read books. That's not true. According to his first wife, Ivana, Donald keeps 2 books at his bedside and reads them every night before he goes to sleep. One is Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. The other is Adolf Hitler's My New Order, a collection of Hitler's speeches. It shows. Like Hitler, Donald Trump has destroyed something vital to democracy: the truth. Trump told 31,000 lies during his 4 years in the White House. That's over 21 lies a day. He demonized those who opposed him by using 2 techniques he learned from Hitler. Hitler demonized the mainstream media of Germany by calling it the Lügenpresse, the lying press. He attacked and suppressed newspapers and radio stations he could not control and replaced them with his own propaganda channels. Donald Trump has changed Hitler's phrase lying press to fake news. Then he's used it like a baseball bat to delegitimate any press outlet that opposes him. Another of Hitler's tricks is the big lie. Tell a lie that's outrageous, so outrageous that it overwhelms your listeners' critical faculties. Then repeat that lie over and over again, repeat it in the simplest terms possible. One of Donald Trump's biggest lies is that the election was stolen. Another is that Trump brought us the biggest economic growth in American history. He did not bring us the biggest growth ever, but Joe Biden has. The gross domestic product of the United States is now the highest in history, higher than Donald Trump's. The stock market is at record levels. It was breaking 25,000 under Trump. Now it's gone past 36,000. Biden's job growth in his first 8 months is 5.6 million, the fastest in modern presidential history. Exports, the lifeline of America's competitiveness, are at record levels. Supply chain problems under Trump were so bad that at the beginning of the COVID crisis, people waited in line to buy toilet paper and found grocery shelves empty. Today, prices have gone up 6.2%, but the shelves are full. According to Reuters, Trump is, quote, the only modern president to leave office with fewer U.S. jobs than when his term began. And Trump hit the lowest level of approval of any president in modern history, sinking to 37%, lower than Joe Biden's current flatline rate. Donald Trump has made it clear that he wants to be president for life like China's Xi Jinping and have a dynasty like North Korea's Kim Jong-un. If Trump gets back into the White House in 2024, it could be the end of America's Constitution and the end of Western democracy. If you want to stick around for more, here are the details. Why should we call Donald Trump Coup-Master Don? Trump instigated the January 6th insurrection that trashed the Capitol and threatened the lives of people like Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi. Mitt Romney called January 6th, quote, an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. And Mitt was right. Among armed right-wing militia groups, planning started months before the January 16th Stop the Steal rally. Militia leaders were urged their members to come and provided them with lists of things to bring. Things like bear spray and zip-tie handcuffs for prisoners. Why prisoners? Because QAnon predicted an apocalyptic day when Donald Trump would reveal his true powers. On that day, QAnon said, Trump would have all the Democrats in Congress and the Senate and all of the so-called people of the swamp rounded up and executed. Meanwhile, General Thomas McInerney and General Michael Flynn encouraged Trump to declare martial law, annul the election, have the military seize all the voting machines, and rerun the election under military auspices. In other words, these Trump-loving retired generals called for what we call a military coup. They argued for what Hitler called a putsch. One sign that Trump was angling to make this possible was that Trump replaced top figures at the Department of Defense with unqualified Trump yes-men, people whose only high-level military credential was their willingness to do anything Trump said. Donald Trump went public on December 20th when he tweeted, quote, "Big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there. Will be wild." Wild is Trump code for violent. In the days before the insurrection, Trump had a war room, a command center, at the Willard Hotel 3 blocks from the White House. Rudy Giuliani, Trump's lawyer, Steve Bannon, and John Eastman, the lawyer who wrote the game plan for legally stealing the election, were all there. The hotel bills were paid by the Trump campaign. Steve Bannon went on his podcast to predict that there would be surprises in the protest. There sure were. Trump disabled the National Guard before January 6th using one of his appointees at the Department of Defense, Kenneth Capuano. Then, when Trump addressed the crowd on January 6th, Trump encouraged violence. "We fight like hell," he told the crowd, "and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore." 5 people died on January 6th. Ali Alexander, an organizer of the Stop the Steal rally, had tweeted way back in December that if Democrats stood in the way of reversing the election, everyone can guess what me and 500,000 others will do to that building. And do it to the Capitol building they did. But Ali saw something further than a mere trashing of a building sacred to democracy. 1776 is always an option, he said. 1776 has become code on the extreme right for an all-out violent revolution like the one in 1776. But this time not against a foreign tyrant, against any occupant of the White House who is not Donald Trump. As Trump's insurrection raged around her, Air Force veteran Ashley Babbitt tried to smash the windows of the door to the chamber of the House of Representatives. She and the crowd around her were attempting to storm the room and arrest Democratic congresspeople. What was the crowd's intention? Ashley Babbitt's last tweet said, "The storm is here," meaning it was time for mass executions. Ashley Babbitt, by the way, was shot, unfortunately. That's Coup-Master Don. Then there's Dictator Don at a gathering of donors at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump mentioned that China's leader, Xi Jinping, had just taken a major step toward making himself China's dictator for life. Trump enthused about what a great achievement that was. He told the crowd, "Wouldn't it be great if we had something like that here?" Then there's Trump's admiration for the Kim dynasty in North Korea. The dynasty was founded in 1948 by Kim Il-sung. Kim Jong-un, North Korea's current dictator, is Kim Il-sung's grandson. Trump has made it clear that he'd like the same sort of permanent hold on the top position in the nation for his children and grandchildren. And there's Trump's fawning over Russia's Vladimir Putin at Helsinki in 2018. Trump had been trying to get Putin's attention for years. He was a Putin fan. Why? According to his former fixer and right-hand man, Michael Cohen, because Trump wanted to achieve in America what Putin had achieved in Russia. A dictatorship for life. A dictatorship where the dictator owns 1/6 of the national economy. No wonder Judge Tanya Chutkan in November 9th tried to remind Trump that presidents are not kings. But that's not all. There's Traitor Don, the man who surrendered Afghanistan to the Taliban in talks in Doha, the man who gave up the entire Middle East to Vladimir Putin by pulling out of Syria, the man who handed Asia to China by pulling out of an economic alliance of 12 Pacific nations like Japan, Australia, Malaysia, and Peru, an alliance we had put together with nations on both sides of the Pacific, an alliance we intended to lead, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Trump's withdrawal opened a power vacuum in the Pacific, a power vacuum that China is trying to fill. China has applied for entry into the Trans-Pacific Alliance. If it gets that entry, it will take the throne that we built for ourselves. Then there was Trump's alienation of our relationship with our allies in NATO, an alliance we put together, an alliance that was the most powerful in the world until Donald Trump came along and trashed it. With Trump's alienation of our allies, we gave up our role as leader of the free world. Finally, there's Donald Trump's attempt to steal the election, his attempt to pull the biggest election fraud in American history. Some of these things are just policy, but others are treason. Next, there is Criminal Don, the man who committed the negligent homicide of 500,000 Americans when he crippled the American government's pandemic prediction and response operations early in his presidency. Then, when he told the American public 40 times that the COVID virus was about to disappear, and when he explained that it was a Democratic Party hoax. On the illegal immigrant front, in 1978, Trump hired illegal Polish workers who spent 6 months demolishing Manhattan's Bonwit Teller building to make room for Trump Tower. Often those men weren't paid. Yes, Donald Trump hired illegal immigrants. But that's not all. Early in her career, Melania Trump worked illegally as a model in the USA. On the more traditional criminal front, Trump is reported to have worked with Fat Tony Salerno, head of the Genovese crime family, and Paul Castellano, head of the Gambino crime family, to construct Trump Tower. That's not the end of Trump's criminal record. The Mueller report shows that Trump was guilty of obstruction of justice and witness tampering with the court cases of Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, Michael Flynn, and Roger Stone. Finally, Trump violated the Hatch Act by having 18 government employees work on his campaign while they were paid with the money from your taxes and mine. Remember, many of us who were paying Donald Trump's political operatives were Democrats. Donald Trump is fine with breaking the law as long as the lawbreaker is him. In fact, Trump seems to feel that he is the law. The law and order he talks about is his divine right to jail you and me and to inspire his followers to pepper us with death threats. Finally, there's Moscow Don. My right-wing opponent in a debate on 545 radio stations on November 10th claimed that the Mueller report absolved Donald Trump of collusion with the Russians. That is a lie. It was concocted by Trump's puppet in the Justice Department, Attorney General William Barr. Trump's first trip to Moscow was an all-expense-paid visit in 1987. Who footed the bills? The Russian government. Were the Russians grooming Donald Trump to be a Russian asset? A useful idiot? You bet. Trump's fascination with Russia never stopped. He married 2 women from the Russian sphere of influence, Ivana from Czechia and Melania from Slovenia. He threw his annual Miss Universe pageant in 2013 in Moscow. He tried with all his might to get a meeting with his hero, Vladimir Putin. He failed. Trump told his audience at presidential campaign rallies that he had absolutely no business in Russia. As usual, that was a lie. On October 2015, 3 months into his first campaign for the presidency, Trump signed a non-binding letter of intent to move forward with a Moscow Trump Tower project. He offered a free penthouse to Vladimir Putin, but he still could not get Putin's personal attention. In 2016, a shadowy cyber figure who called himself Guccifer 2.0 passed Clinton emails to Trump via Julian Assange. Guccifer 2.0 was a Russian officer of the Military Intelligence Directorate, the GRU, and those emails made Trump's campaign. In 2016, when Donald Trump Jr. was given the opportunity to meet with Russian lawyer Natalia Velenskaya about potential Hillary dirt from Russia, he said, "I love it." Trump's sons admitted that the Trump organization raked in huge amounts of money from the Russian buyers and renters of Trump properties, but that's not all. Meanwhile, Trump Tower has become the American capital of the Russian mafia. Several books detail how Russian mob money laundering operations were run out of Trump properties. Yes, Russian money laundering operations run out of Trump Tower and other Russian mafia-friendly Trump properties. Then there's Christopher Steele's dossier reporting on how the Russians cultivated Trump as an asset for 30 years. Right-wing columnist John M. Curtis, my opponent in my radio debate on Coast to Coast, says Steele is a con man who made the whole thing up. That is a popular line among members of the Trump cult, but it is false. Steele was the lead Russianist at MI6. MI6 is one of the most respected spy agencies in the world. It's England's CIA. Steele ran MI6's Russia desk. On top of Steele's report, says ABC TV in Chicago, the Mueller probe found that Russia had been making efforts to meddle in the 2016 campaign and that Trump campaign members and surrogates had promoted and retweeted Russian-produced political content alleging voter fraud and criminal activity on the part of Hillary Clinton. Investigators determined there had been numerous links, i.e. contacts, between Trump campaign officials and individuals having ties to the Russian government. October 18th, after years of silence, Steele did an interview on ABC TV with George Stephanopoulos. Quote, "It was credible reporting," Steele told Stephanopoulos. "We knew some of it was right, and we suspected some of it may never be provable." It meant that for the first time, there was a potentially serious situation of compromising material against a presidential candidate, and therefore it became much more of a serious issue than we had expected. Steele recalled, "I was surprised and shocked." Donald Trump's allies are trying to paint Joe Biden as a tyrant who must be overthrown. But that's not true. The new tyrant wannabe, the new King George in waiting, is Donald Trump. Again, Donald Trump has been running for two things ever since he lost the election of 2020. One is to overturn the election and move back into the White House. Now, today. In fact, there are fans of his who believe he still is president. The other thing he's been running for is to win re-election in 2024. But Donald Trump is the opposite everything America stands for and worse. He could spell democracy's finish. This is Howard Bloom speaking to you from the future. It's most especially now your job and my job to make. Or, hard to laugh after something like that. Want to know why? Ask how. And now for the sleazy, surreptitious, sneaky little off button.